talk is basically 30 minutes. I'll try to cover 10 minutes of each. Part one would be basically dealing with the what you know about what is the histology of GIST and what's the IHC. Second part also you know about is molecular pathology, but my last 10 minutes would be some new facts which have come into literature in last 1 to 2 years on GIST. So there are common doubts that most of the pathologists have, and especially when we sit in tumor board. Uh, First doubt is, what does CD117 positive mean therapeutically? Normally, like in breast cancer, we have HER2 positive, you give Herceptin. So what does CD117 positive mean to a patient, to an oncologist, to an oncosurgeon, and us? Second, we will see that there are a lot of types of CD117 patterns in IHC. Like any other IHC, this could be a membranous pattern, it could be a nuclear pattern, it could be cytoplasmic. So what does this pattern mean? The third common question which is asked is, today as a patient, if I get a c-KIT mutation today, which is 23rd September 2020, what are the chances that I'll develop GIST, and when do I develop GIST? We'll answer that. And last, we will just tell you why should you not stop only at CD117 or a c-KIT, and you should do an exon level study in all GIST. So a brief introduction, it's a stromal tumor which occurs in GIT, that's why it is called GIST. And before we got the targeted therapies coming into our system of oncology, the prognosis of this tumor used to be very bad. It was like a doom syndrome for the patients. But the whole thing changed in GIST in early 90s or maybe late 90s when we got um, molecular targeted therapy, and overnight or over a period of 6 months, this tumor changed from an incurable to absolutely curable tumor. This is a common slide that we see, that which are the common parts of the GIT which get GIST, and the commonest is stomach, and next is small intestine. And but there's something also called as extra intestinal GIST, which we should be careful about. GIST can occur slightly outside the stomach and intestine, mainly in omentum and mesentery. So whenever you're seeing a mesenteric mass and or a omental mass, keep this also one of your DDs. Patient can come with any of the syndrome, but like typical of a GIT cancer, they will normally come with anemia and chronic fatigue. And this is how it looks like any other stromal tumor in a body. It will be fleshy, it will be pink. It is generally circumscribed, and an average size of this tumor is 5 centimeter. This is what all of us see on day in, day out in our reporting. It's a spindle cell tumor, which is basically in fascicles with palisading. So I'll not go into details in this because we know. And this tumor, other than being spindle cells, has characteristic perinuclear vacuoles. So if you're seeing a abdominal mass, which is spindle cell tumor with vacuoles, with some amount of hyalinization, keep GIST as one of your DDs. Typical of a GIST, this is the mucosa on your left, and then you see muscularis mucosa, and this is arising from the mesentery, from the parenchyma or the stroma. This is higher power, showing these pink sphenoid fibers, which are typical in a GIST. So you can either have, so if you see this panel A, B, C, D, spindle cell GIST, the second type of GIST, which is called epithelioid GIST, which is not so good GIST. And within the spindle cell GIST, you are supposed to subtype it as sclerosing or palisading type. And this is the epithelioid GIST, which I told you. It looks something like a high-grade sarcoma kind of a thing, where you have a condensed rim of eosinophilic cytoplasm. Here you get a nucleus. This is a cytoplasm. And you've got a very, very well-defined cell membrane, as if somebody has taken a sketch pen or a marker and made these cell boundaries. So again, if you're seeing a tumor which is looking sarcomatous, it is looking epithelioid kind of look, with these two typical features, think of epithelioid GIST. So a normal histopath report that you and me sign, please do not sign it only as a GIST. Call it, is it a GIST? Is it a mesenchymal tumor? You can have a leiomyoma, you can have a neural tumor also. So the first thing when you see a spindle cell tumor, your report should say GIST. Second, call it benign or malignant, we'll just see. Third, you're gonna tell it it's a spindle or an epithelioid. And if it's a spindle, call it sclerosing or palisading vacuolated. So your ideal report should read, for example, benign GIST spindle cell type bracket should read palisaded vacuolated. That's a complete report which your oncologist will ask for in a tumor board. Now comes the golden IHC that we've been doing in GIST, which is called CD117, also called as c-KIT, and it is seen in 95% of the GIST. And this is the first myth that we have, that remember the intensity of the stain, the pattern of the stain has no therapeutic significance. So there is no point while you're talking in a tumor board in a big room where you have 10 oncologists, do not harp much about what type of stain it is. You have to just call it c-KIT positive or negative. Even it does not mean if c-KIT is intensely positive, the patient will respond to imatinib. That's not true. And the most important thing is even patients without c-KIT does not exclude the patient from being treated by imatinib. So this is another myth which I told you. HER2, you give Herceptin, just immaterial of whether it's c-KIT positive or not. You can give a trial of tyrosine kinase inhibitors like imatinib. Before c-KIT came, we had CD34, but then CD34 was not a very good marker because it used to pick up only 75 to 80% of the GIST. And there were many other markers before CD117 came called SMA, Vimentin, but they are not used anymore for diagnosing this entity. This is various patterns. We'll not go into details. It can have any of the patterns, staining of c-KIT and N-caldesmon. One little quiz, which is for myself because this is an online thing. So whenever you actually do a CD117 stain in any part of the body, be it a testicular tumor or be it a salivary gland tumor or a GIST, the best cell to pick up as an internal control is a mast cell. So when you're seeing an HE slide and you see mast cells and then you see the same slide under CD117, if you see these mast cells positive, that means your IHC has worked. This was another quiz. Obviously, we'll not have a poll here. So CD117 can be seen in n number of tumors, right? This is a long list which are c-KIT positive. So let's not go back with this idea that c-KIT is equal to GIST. And the common ones that you will see are highlighted in this red arrow. Seminoma is positive. Adenoid cystic carcinoma of the salivary gland is positive. Granulocytic sarcoma and mastocytosis. So when you're actually seeing not only these GIST, there are many other tumors which can be c-KIT positive. And as I told you, 95% of them have c-KIT mutation, but there are 5% of the tumors which are KIT negative. Those can either be a wild type. Wild type means this GIST has come without any mutations of c-KIT, or the other ones could be PDGFRA, which is platelet derived growth factor. And these kind of c-KIT negative GIST are normally seen in omentum or stomach, and they are generally epithelioid or mixed type. And this is the one called DOG1, which we all use. c-KIT and DOG1 should be used simultaneously because DOG1 is slightly better than CD117 in form of higher sensitivity and specificity. So it's better in a lab, you do a CD117 and a DOG1 together. That's a long list of spindle cell tumors that can occur in GIT. And beware, CD117 is not the last answer. Even a melanoma, metastatic, which is epithelioid type, can be CD117 positive. So you have to put everything together in a GIST diagnosis. This is a long chart. Again, I'm not going to details. It's given in a regular textbook where you have a lot of mesenchymal tumors which can occur in GIT. But what I was trying to highlight is see this KIT and DOG, they're only seen in GIST. All other DDs which are there in GIT, which are spindle cell, would be negative to these two. Now we come to the part 2. I'm done with 10 minutes. Next 10 minutes, we'll go with molecular aspects. Now this was the breakthrough in the GIST, which was called as a c-KIT mutation. This is a cell membrane. This is tyrosine kinase receptor. SCF basically means stem cell factor. So this is a cell, this is a nucleus. If this cell has to multiply, there is a stem cell factor, a stimulating factor which comes from outside. The notice goes to the cell, you're supposed to multiply. This is like a normal cell, I'm telling you. There are multiple pathways like mTOR pathway or the RAS pathway. Through these pathways, the nucleus are going to tell now divide and they undergo a mitosis. This is normally how our cells in our liver, in our skin is multiplying. But what happens if you have a mutation in this receptor level, then even without a stimulus from your body, automatically this cell undergoes a multiplication unchecked, which leads to tumor. So these are the same pathways. Basically, this is the tyrosine kinase receptor, which when it gets phosphorylated by an external factor, these are the pathways which I've already told you. The nucleus gets a signal, go and divide. So our idea is that any mutation here is actually putting the cell into an auto mode. So these are the mutations. This is the same receptor that I showed you in the previous diagram. Now you have to see that now you're going slightly deeper into molecular aspects. There are multiple exon levels where these mutations can occur. The commonest mutation in a GIST in the tyrosine kinase inhibitor is seen in exon 11. Most out of 100 GIST that happen in the world, 65 would have a c-KIT mutation at this exon level, right? And some can be in exon 9, some at exon 13. And similarly, PDGFRA can have its own exons. We'll not go into detail, but just remember there are multiple exons, out of which exon 11 is the commonest. So we'll just go slightly faster here. Okay, so this is exon, what I told you, exon 11 was the most common mutation. But in case a person has exon 9 mutation, what does it mean to you and me as a doctor? It is arising more in small and large intestine, other tumors which have exon 9. And second, they actually do not behave well. Now, other than KIT, I told you can have PDGFRA mutation, or we'll just go ahead. Okay, the most important thing is that these two mutations are exclusive. So if a person has a KIT mutation, he develops a GIST, he will not have a PDGFRA mutation. If a patient has a PDGFRA mutation, he will not have a c-KIT mutation. So they are mutually exclusive. So in a patient of GIST, either you will have this mutation or this mutation. And as I told you, PDGFRA mutations are slightly better potential. They have lower potential of malignancy and they occur more commonly in stomach. So why I'm telling you all these molecular aspects is because when you tell a patient that you got a GIST, he will ask you, what does it mean to me? You will say it's a stromal tumor. Second, he'll come with a molecular report to you and say that I have a PDGFRA mutation. However, I don't have a c-KIT mutation. So you have to kind of tell him that yes, you have a tumor, but between c-KIT and PDGFRA, if God had to ask you which mutation, you've got the better one because your malignant potential is very less. It can be resected out clearly and we can treat you with certain amount of immunotherapy. So that is what you're going to tell a patient, that PDGFRA mutation GIST are better than c-KIT mutation GIST. And yeah, I think so. I'll sum it up with one little chart. So these are the battery of mutations which can occur. You need not memorize all. I started with saying that c-KIT mutation is the commonest. That means out of all 100 patients that happen in the world of GIST, 75 will have c-KIT, 10 will have PDGFRA, which is a good news because this will have a less malignance potential. 15% will have something called as wild type. Wild type means they'll not have KIT mutation, they'll not have PDGFRA, they'll have some other mutations, which you see in CA colon like RAS mutation, succinyl dehydrogenase. So it is very important when you're reading a molecular report a person carries into your path lab, you're going to quickly look at this. Is it KIT? It is PDGFRA? Is it wild type? Wild type is the worst. PDGFRA is the best. KIT is somewhere in between. And the commonest out of the 75, if you see, out of 100 cases, 65 will fall into exon 11 mutation. And this is most treatable by imatinib. So this slide is slightly confusing, but if you remember these red ones, you just basically want to look at what mutation you have. So now the report which I told you in any GIST that you are supposed to say whether it is a spindle cell, epithelioid, is it benign, is it malignant, is it mesenchymal, it is GIST. Now today you have to complete your report by saying that what mutation he has. So a complete report would actually read a benign GIST arising from stomach, palisading spindle cell type with KIT mutation deletion in this case at the level of exon 11. That is a complete GIST histopathology molecular report. And that's how it has supposed to be reported now. So what is it now coming to it? Why are we doing all this drama of doing KIT and PDGFRA? Remember exon 11 I told you was a commonest mutation. If you go back to this big chart, out of the 75, 65 were exon 11. So we quickly jump back. So this tumor, a patient who has this exon 11 is likely to respond to imatinib twice. Twice means he is got a very good potential to be treated by imatinib. Whereas an exon 9 mutation patients are slightly not resistant, but they require a higher dose of imatinib. So this is it's a long term implication, because if you give 400 milligram tablets of imatinib to this exon 9 patient, that patient tumor will not respond to this therapy. And as I told you, PDGFRA, although it's a good, less malignant potential, it is imatinib resistant. SDH deficient is one of the wild type, it's imatinib resistant. So these two set of patients, imatinib is not given. In this patient, imatinib is given at a double dose. And at this patient, 400 milligram is a standard dose, is given to exon 11 mutation. So now you'll understand why we are doing so much thread bearing of a tumor arising in the GIT. I'll go slightly fast. Okay, we understand just start from ICC or interstitial cells of Kayal. They are the cell of the origin. Now we come to the last 7-8 minutes, which is a part 3 of the tumor. What is a microgist? This is not a very new concept. This came around 3 years back, which says that today, if you and me, we dissect all stomachs in a mortuary, we are likely to see around 10% of stomachs to have small gist. Microgist is defined as small nodules in the stomach, in the wall, which are less than 1 centimeter. It's only that in an autopsy, we do not actually, we just open up the stomach, we inspect the mucosa, and we see the serosal aspect, and that's the end of our autopsy. But if you actually do serial dissection, you'll be surprised. There are a lot of people who die with microgysts. How many of us would actually be living with it? But there's nothing to be worried. It's a mitotically inactive tumor. It's like some pituitary adenoma. If you do an autopsy study, you'll find in many. They're partially calcified, and they are something called as tumorigenic arrest. They're just lying, and the KIT mutation has already occurred. So that was one of the myths that I told you, that today on 23rd September 2020, if I get a KIT mutation, does not mean that in 2 months I'm going to develop a 20 centimeter large cyst in my abdomen. Sorry, doesn't happen. If I'm lucky, and if there's an arrest of mutation at that stage, I can live my entire life with a small microcyst. So a mere presence of KIT mutation in a liquid biopsy in a blood does not mean, don't scare that patient that you're gonna, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, you're prone to get GIST. That's not true. So that's what I'm saying. Mutation, a simple c-KIT mutation is not sufficient to progress a tumor. This is what I meant to say, that today, if 10 million people have microgyst, only out of that 5,000 people per year will move to something called as a low risk gist, which is a benign gist. And out of this 5,000, only 2,000 will go into a full blown malignant gist that you and me report on a day-to-day basis in our hospitals. So what takes a microgist into a symptomatic gist that you and me see? A c-KIT mutation just pushes it from a normal cell to a microgist. From microgist ahead, you have to have these chromosomal errors like chromosome 14 monosomy, or you have to have a loss of chromosome 24. There are many more mutations that take place. So it's something like a model that you read in your textbook of Robbins. In a normal CA colon, it shows you normal colon. I'm just telling you, this is not normal colon. This is a normal colon. Then you move into a kind of a pre-malignant lesions like adenoma, and then you go into carcinoma, and then metastatic carcinoma. So similarly, like CA colon, even in GIST, now you have got something like a microgist, which is called a intramuscular ICC cells undergoing the mutation. Then when you have a loss of chromosome at the level of 14, 22, you develop a benign gist. Then further loss. So this is a second hit, this is a third hit. Only then you come up with a full-blown malignant gist that we report in our hospitals. This is the same slide. So there are a lot of studies which are going on at the chromosomal level that other than 14 and 12. And but we'll not go into details, but just remember, c-KIT is not enough. Okay, this is the therapy that we have been talking of, imatinib. And as I told you, before 2000, the response to a conventional chemotherapy in GIST was less than 5%. Though it was a very dismal tumor in late 90s, till we got the imatinib coming up. Now, what does imatinib do is, this is the same tyrosine kinase inhibitor that we showed you. Then there was a pathway and going to nucleus. And this was the c-Kit. The imatinib, which is a tablet form, this molecule comes and blocks the c-Kit, or it fills this gap, which stops this dimerization of these two tyrosine kinase inhibitors, and these pathways which were promoting the nucleus to undergo a mitosis stops. So by giving imatinib, you are basically at a receptor level, tyrosine kinase inhibitor, you were stopping the cascade down and the tumor used to get stopped. This is how the tablet looks, and it was actually used for the first time around 20 years back. And today it's a state of the art treatment. Okay, this is a very common chart that you see in every textbook. Remember, in any gist, to tell you the disease recurrence or the prognosis, the most important thing is measure the size while you're grossing. Your very important sizes are 2 centimeter, 5 centimeter, 10 centimeter, and mitotic index, whether it's less than 5 or more than 5, right? 5 millimeter square in our common parlance means 50 high power fields. So remember, this is one tumor where you don't count 10 high power fields, you count 50 high power fields. And what this chart actually shows is that if there is a tumor in a stomach which has got less than 5 mitosis, and maybe if the size is 7 centimeter, it is 3.6 times more worse prognosis compared to this tumor. So they've called this tumor as a standard tumor, and this is the relative risk of the other tumors. So remember, in normal histopathology lab, when you're reporting, just remember the mitotic count and size. And in your report, you can actually put a lining or a under sentence and call it either a very low risk, intermediate, or high risk. This is one sentence that everybody wants to listen to. This is one common mistake we do in our grossing, which I didn't cover earlier, is that there are certain times you get a gist which have got a tumor rupture, which actually puts it into a very bad prognosis irrespective of size, and that has to be written in your grossing notes. Um, Now we'll just go slightly fast. Okay, yeah, if a patient has undergone an imatinib therapy, don't read the text. This is just a series of 43 cases who are worked up on GIST. You will be surprised if those biopsies are actually taken in a patient who has got treatment from imatinib. They actually have a retrogressive change. So you can actually have something called a rhabdomyoblastic differentiation. But if you actually go into high part, these nuclei are not that angry looking. So in a imatinib treated patient, if you get a biopsy, don't be surprised if you see these retrogressive, metaplastic changes occurring. They are known to occur. Some tumors which are not treatable by imatinib can actually de-differentiate and lead to anaplastic carcinoma also. And last 1 minute is on a resistance to a TKI. So there's something called primary resistance. Like you have an antibiotic resistance, likewise 10% of patients can actually be resistant to imatinib. That can be because of underdosing, or as I told you, there are certain mutations where the imatinib will not work. So there's no point giving imatinib to a GIST patient with PDGFRA mutation. He will not respond and he will be resistant. But there's something called secondary resistance, like antibiotics. If you keep underdosing the patient with low doses of imatinib, he's likely to develop a acquired mutation and he becomes secondary resistant. So what do you do with a patient who's got imatinib resistance? What is happening in an oncology center? You use a second line tyrosine kinase inhibitors, which is commonly available in any oncology center, called sunitinib and sorafenib. And what has just now come into the market, this is around 1 year old, this is called the third line. So that's my last slide. Don't get cluttered. This is given in any Google form you will find. Is one take home message is that imatinib is not the only treatment. For small gist, we still do surgeries. Imatinib is only required if it's a large gist and you have an incomplete resection, or it has got certain amount of extensions into soft tissue. And when to use which imatinib is what I've explained to you already. So CD117 does not mean that the patient will respond to imatinib. Remember that. So not like HER2. IHC staining pattern has no bearing. No bearing. You have to just write positive or negative. And it is very important for you to actually differentiate between c-Kit mutated, PDGFRA mutated, and wild GIST. I've explained to you the changes in therapy, and also given you a brief overview of what a microgist is and why a molecular characterization or the exon, which exon is undergoing a mutation is so very important, because that decides on your dosage of your matrix.